From Vermont Public, this is The Frequency. I'm Mitch Wertlieb. It's Saturday, February 8th, which means you're listening to a special weekend edition of the podcast featuring the Capitol Recap. Coming up, details emerge regarding how school choice would change under plans by the Scott administration to rework Vermont's education system. That's after this. For weeks, administration officials have been keeping mum about a key question hanging over Governor Phil Scott's sweeping proposal to overhaul Vermont's pre-K through 12 system. What would happen to school choice? But Thursday, Education Secretary Zoie Saunders provided some answers. For this week's edition of the Capitol Recap, Vermont Public Education reporter Lola Duffort sat down with State House reporter Peter Hirschfeld to break down what we learned.
Lola, the last time you and I talked about Phil Scott's big plan to consolidate school governance, we didn't have much in the way of details. That changed this week when Education Secretary Zoie Saunders briefed lawmakers on the specifics of the plan. What were the big takeaways for you from that presentation?
Yeah, so if you and hopefully our listeners will recall, Scott has said he wants to merge the 119 school districts that currently exist into 5 regional entities. And this week, Zoie Saunders said that within these 5 regional entities, every child would be assigned a default public elementary, middle, and high school. And every child would also be given the opportunity to enter a lottery if they so wished, which could give them access to what administration officials are referring to as school choice schools, which could be public or private.
So how many of these school choice schools would there be in each of these new districts, and how many winning lottery tickets would be available to kids that didn't want to go to their assigned public school?
We don't know yet. Minimum, there would be 1 school choice school per district. Districts would have to approve at least 1. But they could approve a lot more if they wanted, although there would be sort of minimum state requirements that would govern a school's eligibility to become a school choice school.
There are a lot of big and influential players in Vermont's education system that have long been wary of expanding school choice. The NEA, for example, a big one of those. Why are those constituencies so opposed to expanding school choice, and how are they responding to this plan?
So the knock against school choice has always been, particularly when you involve private schools, that what happens is that private schools will pick and choose the students that they want, and in the process siphon needed public dollars away from a public system, which then has to deal with student populations with higher concentrations of need with fewer resources. Not super surprisingly, the NEA here is saying, hell no, we won't go. This is just an attempt to dramatically expand the voucher system that currently exists in certain communities statewide.
What are we going to hear from Zoie Saunders to alleviate those concerns? Because obviously that's going to be something that the administration has to overcome in order for this plan to have a fighting chance in the legislature.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think they'll make a twofold argument. They already are. One is that some amount of school choice is, good, fosters innovation. But the argument they're really going to be leaning on to convince public school advocates is that actually this is a way to introduce regulations which don't exist right now on the flow of public money to private schools, right? Right now we have a system where we're still paying for out-of-state prep schools in certain communities. And they're saying schools that become school choice schools would be subject to enhanced accountability measures that they are not subject to right now. Also, school districts that operate schools would get a really key say about whether or not a private school can operate within its borders and get public money. And so could act as a check on a, proliferation of private schools that operate in such a way that harms their ability to deliver on their mission.
The last time we talked, I asked the question, is this the end of local control as we know it for the education system? It sounds, though, like the boards that oversee these 5 districts are going to have a lot more influence over the course of education policy within a district than current school boards do now.
I think that's true. I don't want to understate the loss of local autonomy in certain respects, particularly around funding. But yes, these boards would nevertheless have some pretty important and potentially politically explosive powers.
That was Vermont Public education reporter Lola Duffort speaking to State House reporter Peter Hirschfeld. To learn more about the governor's proposal, head to vermontpublic.org to read more of Lola's reporting. Thanks for listening to The Frequency today. Our executive producer is Kevin Trevelyan, and our music is by Blue Dot Sessions. I'm Mitch Wertlieb. Talk to you next week.